Hello YouTube friends, subscribers, and visitors. Frosty the Dragon here, making a rare non-game appearance, but not a face-to-face one. The only webcam I have has really terrible quality, and I'm not up to setting the video camera right now. I don't remember if I discussed this the last time I made a non-game appearance, but I am attempting to be a fiction writer and have been for some time now. I don't quite mean fan fiction, as if I wanted that. I could do that at any time. I'm talking writing entire fantasy novels and the like. I had about 4 potential ideas for books that I had, 2 of which I'm actively working with now, a third which I put on the back burner due to lack of ideas, and a fourth that would require me to get my hands on the appropriate license for it before I really get into it. What I don't tell most people, until now, is that there was a 5th idea I quickly scrapped. The reason had something to do with the age target, which I can't really explain further without fully spoiling it. I will, however, do a reading based on this scrapped work of mine, to try and gauge how well it might be received were I to take it up again. So, without further ado, let us begin. The last thing I remember was studying the animals of this world when one of the devices I had built for this purpose exploded. I could still hear the explosion ringing in my ears, and a bump on the side of my head undoubtedly caused by fragments of the building falling on me. Most of this laboratory was in rubble, and of all the cages used for experiments, only one stayed intact. I could not tell what the inhabitant of this cage was from my current position on my side, so after leaning up, I tried to stand to get a better look. My attempts to do this, however, failed because it no longer felt like a natural position to stand on 2 legs. Indeed, my arms also felt shorter, my shoulders denser, and the entirety made movement on all 4s the most natural. So I trotted in this fashion towards the cage, and leaned my arms against it to brace myself and get a better look. As I did this, however, I developed a headache, and it seemed that the world lost nearly all color for a moment. I could see black, white, a bright purple, but nothing else. I simply leaned my aching head against my left arm, which felt abnormally fuzzy, and looked into the cage when the headache subsided. I could not tell whether my sight was back to normal or still in its haze, for what I saw in the cage was a purple rodent. The smallest of the subjects, whom I called Adrian, but my older brother insisted on calling AK for reasons unknown. After looking for a while, I realized my sight was not playing tricks on me, for I saw one of the wooden beams that had been inside the wall of the laboratory before, and it was still the normal color. I took a look at the rat and said, "What happened to you? I don't remember putting you in hair dye." One look at me, and the rat hustled to the back of the cage, assuming a defensive position. At first he was simply spewing a squeaky kind of noise, as I'd known him to do, but partway through his speech my headache kicked in again, and along with the low color, I could clearly hear his high-pitched voice. "Away from me, you hairball! My owners go missing, and now you go picking for a meal?" Noting that my voice had changed somewhat when I originally spoke to him, and still suffering, I told him, "Listen to me, Adrian. Your owners are not missing." Relaxing slightly, Adrian answered, "If you're either Ayumu or Suta, then the building must have struck me too. How did you comprehend what I just said?" "I couldn't tell you," I said, "except it has to do with these headaches I'm getting. I see a little color and your voice becomes clear." "You know what? I thought I saw a broken mirror on the floor. Perhaps you should—" Before Adrian could finish, my headache subsided and my vision returned somewhat to normal, but his voice returned to squeaky noises. Not wanting to wait for another round of discussion, I got back on all 4s and started searching. Along the way, I noticed that my hairiness did not stop at my arms. Indeed, I felt it all over my body, particularly a couple long ones at the size of my nose. I also felt like something was perched on both sides of the top of my head and at the base of my spine. Lastly, my hands and feet felt smaller and thicker. When I finally reached the mirror Adrian mentioned, I discovered it was a broken piece of a monitor used in the lab equipment. What I saw in the reflective surface, much to my shock, was not a human at all. It was a cat, mostly cream color, but with black highlights around the ears. And what was with the small lump in his forehead? I reached with a hand, a hand that, I should note, still wore a pair of gold and silver rings with gemstones in them, and was able to feel it for myself as well as the ears. And those whiskers! I started having another massive headache at this point, so I hustled as best as I could to Adrian. Once the color haze kicked in, I asked, "What is the meaning of this?" "You still don't know?" Adrian answered. "You, Ayumu, have become one of us, the very animals you were studying." But how?" "I assume it had to do with the lab explosion. Maybe the guy behind you with the claws can explain it better." "What guy with the claws?" I turned to find myself face to face with a much larger rodent, one slightly above my shoulder height, in fact. I could not properly discern its color, only that the short spikes on its back were far darker than the rest of the creature. Also, the mentioned claws were practically its fingers, considering their position and length. What struck me the most was that it was wearing rubber bands around its left wrist, a trait I would easily associate with my own brother Suta. I looked squarely at him and said, "Okay, buddy, explain yourself." The creature recoiled with a headache, prompting me to press further. "What are you doing wearing rubber bands the way my brother does?" In a surprisingly burly voice, the rodent responded, "What are you doing with my brother's rings on your paw?" Brother's rings? Since when did the brothers of rodents wear gold and silver rings, especially with gemstones in them? "Listen, I don't know what you're insinuating, but I stopped speaking for a moment, realizing just what was going on. An idea struck me. What if I addressed him by my brother's name? "Suta?" My question was met quickly with a hug, something one of us did when the other was stressed to the point of losing their mind. "Brother, you survived!" "Yes, but mutated in the process, and constant headaches." Speaking of which, that headache wore off again, and I finally got a better look at what my brother had become. His body was the color of sand, the main portion matching the dry version, and the spikes more fitting the wetter variant constantly barraged by water on a beach. The eyes kind of unnerved me a bit. Large, dark eyes. My observation was cut short by Suta saying, "Listen, we need to get out of here and find help." "Well, we can't exactly leave without Adrian." There you have it, folks, the idea that I had originally scrapped. And there were a few memorable lines that I came up with, a few memorable exchanges, but I don't really have a good base around it. If you want me to try to continue with this, go ahead and let me know. I'll see what I can do. Just don't expect a lot.